You know that feeling, right? You're stuck in traffic, just absolutely bumper to bumper, and you look up at the wide open sky and think, man, if I could just fly over all this. Well, that dream, that idea of hopping in a personal vehicle and just skipping the gridlock, it might be a whole lot closer than you realize. So let's get into it, because the future of what they're calling urban air mobility is getting very real, very fast.
I mean, just take a second and picture this. Imagine sleek, quiet electric vehicles just zipping between skyscrapers. That commute that takes you an hour of just crawling in traffic? Yeah, that could become a breezy 10-minute flight. And look, this isn't some pie-in-the-sky science fiction movie. This is a vision that engineers, city planners, and some of the biggest companies in the world are pouring billions into right now. They are literally trying to open up a new dimension for how we get around our cities.
So the official name for this whole idea is urban air mobility, or UAM for short, and it is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, a completely new transportation network that exists in the air above our cities. We're talking about an entire ecosystem of small electric vehicles that can take off and land vertically. They call them eVTOLs, and they're being designed to do everything from delivering your packages to acting as full-on air taxis. It is a very serious concept. Okay, so the tech is moving at lightning speed, right? The vehicle designs are getting cooler by the minute, and the business plans are all being drawn up. But there is one huge and kind of surprisingly simple problem that could ground this entire industry before it even really takes off. What do you think it is?
Yep, that's it, noise. I mean, think about it. Before we have thousands of these things flying over our heads, they have to be quiet enough that we can all live with them. It sounds like such a simple problem, but from a technical and acoustic standpoint, it is a massive, massive challenge.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This quote comes directly from a major research paper on this very topic. The experts all agree, noise and safety are the two biggest mountains they have to climb. Because if these flying taxis are too loud, nobody's going to want them flying over their homes or their kids' schools or their offices, and if that happens, the whole dream just collapses. So the big question becomes, how in the world do you solve for silence?
Well, when you have an incredibly complex problem with thousands of moving parts, like, say, choreographing the flight paths for a whole fleet of aircraft to make the least amount of noise possible, you turn to the most powerful problem-solving tool we've got, artificial intelligence. So, the way they're doing this is with a really cool type of AI called reinforcement learning. First, the engineers set the goals. They basically tell the AI, okay, your job is to find the perfect balance between keeping the aircraft safe and making sure it's quiet for the people on the ground. Then, and this is the really clever bit, they create what's called a reward function. Honestly, you can think of it just like training a dog with treats. Every time the AI runs a simulation and comes up with a flight path that's quieter and safer, it gets a point, a little digital treat. If it messes up, makes too much noise, or creates a risk, it gets penalized. You then have it run this simulation millions and millions of times, and eventually, the AI literally teaches itself the best possible strategies to get the biggest reward.
But here's the catch, and there's always a catch, isn't there? When you tell an AI to optimize for just one thing, you can get some unexpected results somewhere else. AI is incredibly logical, you know? It will always find the most direct way to get its reward, but that path isn't always what a human might have intended.
So what did the AI figure out? Well, this chart shows it perfectly. To make the least amount of noise on the ground, the AI learned that the single best strategy is to just fly as high as it possibly can. It makes sense, right? The higher up you are, the more the sound spreads out and dissipates before it reaches our ears. So when the reward for being quiet was turned all the way up, the AI just started shoving all the air taxis into the highest possible flight lanes.
And this next slide really drives home that trade-off. The chart on the left shows that as the reward for quietness goes up, the noise level on the ground goes way down. That's a huge win, right? Well, maybe, because the AI accomplishes this by cramming all the vehicles into one high-altitude superhighway, creating these massive traffic jams up in the sky. So you've essentially just traded a noise problem for a potential safety and logistics nightmare. And that brings us to what might be the most complicated piece of this entire puzzle. Because it's not just about solving the technical stuff, it's about us, people. You can engineer the safest, quietest, most efficient flying taxi in history, but if people don't trust it, if they just don't want it in their city, it's never going to happen. This question, and it's pulled directly from a report by the Los Angeles Department of Transportation, really gets to the heart of it all. This isn't a technical question anymore. It's a human one. How do you actually build that bridge of trust between the people creating this technology and the communities who will have to live with it?
And researchers have found there's a whole list of things that people are worried about. Of course, there's safety. That's a given. And we've talked a lot about noise. But people are also asking these much deeper questions, like, am I really going to trust a computer to fly me across a city? What is my view of the skyline going to look like with hundreds of these things flying around? And maybe most importantly, is this just going to be a toy for rich people, or is it something that will actually be fair and accessible for everybody?
To try and get answers, planners are going to some pretty incredible lengths. They're doing huge public surveys, they're holding community meetings, and they're even using immersive VR simulations where you can literally stand on a virtual street corner and see and hear for yourself what a sky full of these vehicles would actually feel like. They are digging deep to really understand what people are thinking.
And that brings us to something really strange that we stumbled upon. While we were putting this explainer together, we were digging through dozens of these super technical, peer-reviewed research papers, the kind that are just filled with complex equations and data charts. And buried deep inside the metadata of one of the most important papers on noise, we found something that was, well, it was just completely bizarre.
Okay, so this is the paper right here. It's from a team at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And as you can see, it looks totally normal. The title is all about metropolitan noise mitigation for UAM. It's about acoustics, flight paths, all this stuff we've been talking about. We were just reading the abstract, checking the data, doing our homework.
And then we scrolled down to the keywords. Now, keywords are just the tags authors use to help other researchers find their work. So you'd expect to see things like acoustics, aerodynamics, maybe traffic simulation. But the keywords listed for this paper were something else. They were psychedelic, chitin, Eleusinian histories, claviceps purpura, and ergat alkaloids.
Now, I promise you, we have checked this 3 times. This is real. For a little context, the Eleusinian mysteries were secret religious rites in ancient Greece. Kykeon was the psychedelic drink they supposedly consumed, a drink made from a fungus called claviceps purpurea, which, yes, produces ergot alkaloids. So that leaves us, and now you, with one final, completely baffling question. What on earth do ancient Greek psychedelic rituals have to do with making the flying taxis of the future quiet?